Okay, everyone, just get your tea and your drinks ready. And we are ready to jump into the second part of our audio note series. So, we left off with the Ongaku. So actually, I also have to tell you guys that I'm not a mass reviewer, so I don't go to places and listen to like tons of gears. I'm not a review freak. And the last time I heard audio note was over 20 years ago. So why the heck am I talking about audio note? It's because when I heard it, it totally defined my audio life. That's why. Because at that time, I heard 3 different audio note systems, and all 3 of those systems were expertly set up. They were really the best representation of how to set up gear, and all 3 were just shockingly good, just vastly beyond anything that I heard in audio at that time. And the experience of hearing those systems that made me decide that I want to build such sound. So actually the Ongaku, I heard it at a Budapest high-end show, and at that high-end show that was in about 1998, I think, or 99. And in that show there were the 2 most expensive rooms, and one of the most expensive room had the B&W Nautilus with the most expensive amps of that time. I think they were transistorized amps. They were Aliska Orange was the brand name, and they were the award-winning amplifiers of the year in Europe. And there were 8 monoblocks driving the B&W Nautilus. It just sounded absolutely horrific. That was the worst sound of the entire show. The most expensive system sounding the absolute worst. So that was a huge eye-opener, that price is not everything, and sometimes it can get you the worst sound by paying top dollars or euros or whatever you carry in your pocket. And the other room, which was the other most expensive room, was the Audio Note Ongaku room, that featured a full audio note setup, from turntable to speakers, which were the A&E speakers that I'm going to talk about later. It was not the LX signature model. I don't know what model that was. At that time I didn't know much about audio note. However, I knew that the entire chain was audio note, and of that system I cannot recall the sonic signature, which is really odd because I'm kind of like an extreme golden ear, and I can recall sonic signatures even like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and so and then I can spot minute details like a driver out of phase, or a coloration in at a narrow frequency band, or whatever you name your thing that you want to hear in audio. But from that Ongaku system, I cannot recall how it sounded. But I can recall that I listened to the Jupiter Symphony, the entire piece, and it seemed as if it was just like 5-minute experience. So it sounded as if time stopped. And that was not just me. Every single person in the room felt that time has stopped, and they've been listening to the system only for a few minutes, not more. And that experience, that Mozart piece, struck me much deeper than I ever heard it performed real life. So that experience with audio note, with Ongaku, just totally tore down that fake BS mythology that sound recording, like playback music, can never be as good as real life. There was this example, this amplifier that you can see right now in front of you, designed by Kondo-san, and it showed the exact opposite. That it was much better than, and it touched me much deeper. I connected with the music much deeper than I ever connected with music that was played by flesh and blood performers, and I grew up with flesh and blood performers, so you cannot say that I never heard a classical performance in my life, and I was just, I fell on my face like, wow, this is awesome. No, I heard tons of performances, and actually I can tell you what happened, that performance that we listened to was performed by much better performers than whom I heard performing that Mozart piece. That's why it could touch me much deeper, because it could connect me to the genius of that conductor and the genius of those who played that piece. And I think this is the true calling of audio, to connect you to music, to bring you where exceptional performances can bring you. And the point is not to listen to some shiny BS Photoshop music that was recorded in a studio and just kind of like a bunch of virtuosi goofing off, and you just clap to them because it's like, it sounds so good, like I can really hear the saxophone, wow, it's almost as good as in real life, and when they hit the drum, that was, wow, there was so much snap in it. Screw the snap, guys. This audio is about music, to connect deeply to music, and if you are just on the surface listening to how things sound, then just get a drum set. It will give you 10 times more joy than wasting your time of any kind of system, because it's never going to get you that kind of snap that a drum set gives you. The true purpose is to get a system that can give you the experience that really deep music can give you. And how Kondo-san did it, his vision was synergy, to have your amplifier talk to your speakers, talk to your turntable through the cabling and everything, and that's because every single piece of equipment has some fault, some difficulty, some error in it. And you need the other piece of equipment to compensate that. And everything needs to be really fine-tuned to have the right output. And if there's just one chain that it's missing or that is not set properly, then it's like dominoes. The entire thing just falls down. So that's why synergy is absolutely incredibly important. And that's why sometimes you get like $100 speakers with a $50 cheap amp and hook it up to a random CD player, and you can get music out of it that's probably not the highest resolution, but you will just notice that you keep on feeding it music after music, and you cannot stop listening to it. And you don't turn on your $1 million system for months and months, and you just listen to the cheap stuff. And it's not because it's so good, but because you found synergy between the components. And in the US we have that mentality that everyone is just a consumer, a mindless consumer. Being a consumer is not a bad thing, but being a mindless consumer, that's really hurtful for you and for everyone. It's because it created a mentality that the companies make their components to suit most brands, or some just a select few brands. So this means that the average speaker you get, or amplifier you get, or interconnect you get is designed in such a fashion to cater to a lot of components, a lot of different flavors in a weak way. So they are not doing one thing excellently, but they are doing many things poorly. And that's the reason why perfect synergy never ever happens, or it just extremely rarely happens. You have to stumble across it, and you need to stay live an audiophile life for decades before you randomly find perfect synergy. Or I would say even like partial synergy. It takes decades to get to that level. To get to the perfect synergy level, I have heard a few systems that my friends have and I have that reach that level, but apart from that, it's just almost never ever happens. And that's because with this mentality that we have, we imagine it's like this lady here. You have a beautiful girl, and you put the latest makeup on it, a completely different hairstyle, a chic baseball hat, and the latest jacket, latest wet t-shirt, shirts, what trousers, what nuts, and everything is like top bananas. But when you put them all together, it's slightly more than a joke. And when you have perfect synergy, it's when everything is going towards a single purpose, speaks the same language, has the same taste, and then you have an authentic presentation. Maybe you won't like it because no one likes Belgian detectives, even if they are the most brilliant minds in the world, because they might not be your style, but it's authentic, and there's nothing fake about it. And when you hear that kind of sound that gives you a true connection to music, then everything that is fake and just hodgepodge, it becomes totally irrelevant. So I tell you another experience that a friend of mine, Tartos, made a guitar recording, and he made it with a guitar that I know extremely well. Actually, I have that. He gave me that guitar, and we played back that guitar recording on several audio systems. We played it back on my system, which at the time was a Stereo 70 amplifier, heavily modified, and Fostex void pipes that I built, and it did not have the highest resolution, but it did have the exact same tonality as the guitar. So I could tell right away after the first note plugged that it was recorded using that guitar. And when we played it in showrooms at the most expensive systems of the era, yes, there was a lot more resolution, a lot more things going on, but the tonality was so distorted that I could have never ever picked on which guitar did he make that recording. He has a large set of guitars, and I know their sound, and if I had to guess on which guitar he made that recording, I would have picked the exact opposite of that guitar. It distorted the tonality so much. So that's when I realized that in our current high-end trend, something is awfully wrong, because it gives you artificially high resolution. It sounds as if you put your ear inside the guts of your guitar, which is what you never ever hear real life. And yes, you can hear the strings resonate much better, but it's not that guitar anymore. You lose the big picture. By zooming in, you just see the tree and you lose the sight of the forest. And that's what synergy is about, to have the forest in your sight and seeing the trees and not losing anything. So going to the next stage of Audionaut, this is Peter Kottrup. He's Audionaut non-Japan. So he is the Audionaut worldwide, and he's most important contribution would be speakers, because Kondo-san, he didn't design speakers, he designed a lot of components in the audio chain, but he did not venture there. So Peter ventured there to make the entire audio note line complete from cartridge to speakers. And let's see. So this is the Audio Note E series speaker. This video series is about. Finally, I get there after 45 minutes of talking. Not bad. And so these speakers were originally the Snell Type E speakers that Peter Snell invented. He was a brilliant genius of an inventor. He created a bunch of speakers, and one of these was the Type E, which was one of his smaller speakers. And the original Type E was taller than the Audio Note E, and it was narrower. So Peter widened it and shortened it. And the reason behind that is that the original design, I have not calculated its ratios, but it was some off ratio that he used, and Peter changed it to musical ratios. So that suits music much better than the original dimensions did. And if you are a speaker designer, then you know that it's absolutely crucial what the dimensions of your speakers are. And from the review magazines and online knowledge, you know that the ratio is important because of internal resonances, what bands are extra amplified by speakers, but it's much more important than that, because the ratio of these resonances also gives a harmonic foundation for the entire music you hear. And if this foundation is compatible with the musical scale, with the musical spectrum we listen to, then it will not interfere with the music. And if it's alien to that, using some weird ratios created by engineers who have zero clue about the theory of music, then it will sound really bad and impact on the sound. So this is where Peter stepped beyond the Type E Snell speakers, that just having a random dimensionality to fit the small parameters of the drivers, he gave them dimensions to fit the music itself. So talking about them, they are relatively smallish speakers, 31-inch high, 14-inch wide, and 10.5-inch deep, and about 1.8 cubic feet, or about 50 liter free amp volume. That's my estimate about the free air volume of the cabinet. It might be a little different, couple liters plus or minus. They are lightly brazed on the inside and have very little internal damping, so it's an active speaker. And that's why it's really crucial to have the right ratio of dimensions, because it's going to contribute to the sound a lot. And the sensitivity is pretty high, 95 to 98 dB, depending on which model you choose, which drivers are in, and which crossover network. And the frequency range given for the LX signature is 18 Hz to 23 kHz at -6 dB point. So the 18 Hz is really amazing because it's only an 8-inch driver. So for this cone, that's a super deep extension, and also for this efficiency, because you can get -6 dB at 18 Hz from such a driver easily, but not at this sensitivity. Take down 10 dBs, like 88 dB or 85 dB, then you can easily reach to 18 Hz. Not easily, but you can try to, and with semi-success. But working with such sensitive drivers, it's quite a feat. Let's go to our next slide. So the port is in the back, and it's a circular port, and it's at the bottom. Most speakers have the port somewhere like higher up, like right here, or they have it up here. This is super unusual to have a port right at the bottom, but it makes perfect sense because it helps the internal air to form a nice straight column that exits at the bottom. So it's like a short pipe that vents at the end. So inside we can have a nice 90 hertz quarter wave form based on the internal dimensions of the speaker. So the speaker will help naturally, because it's live, frequencies, extending them down to 90 hertz. And we will see at the frequency response curve that these speakers are strong down to about 100 hertz, 90 hertz, and then they start to weaken. And that's also because the cabinet helps those frequencies which are above 100 hertz, like up to a full wavelength, which is like 400 hertz. So like 100 to 400 hertz is fortified by the cabinet itself. And we will see that in the frequency response that there's like a major peak there as well. So let's go right here. So this is what I was talking about. You see 100 hertz going to 2, 3, 400 hertz. You see this nice peak? So this part of this peak is because the cabinet helps to provide these nice extra output there. And then here you see that the response is dropping because it's natural for all woofers to start dropping below 100 hertz. But here we have this nice plateau. This plateaus by 28 hertz. And this is because the port is tuned such a way to prevent the drop here. And for a comparison, I have the Alexia, Wilson Audio Alexia, and there it has its woofers working in such a way that the 50 to 80 hertz is boosted up. The cabinet is not helping with anything because it has a dead cabinet, and we have a dip that is created to have an enhanced feel to this bass peak there. So that's why the Wilson Audio speakers sound so bass strong or bass heavy, because they have this artificial contrast between 50-80 hertz to the octave above or 2 octaves above. And then you see it starts dropping like really rapidly, and there's a small knee there, and that's because it has a port which is tuned very low, and that helps. If that wasn't so, it would drop more fast. But what Audiono did, they tuned the port higher. We'll show it later how high, and that creates this nice plateau. But below that, it drops faster than how the Alexia drops. And we can also have a look at this area here, which is between a kilohertz and about, let's see, I'm covering that up, but around 6 kilohertz or so, and that's a dip there. And right now I just have to make a brief pause because my battery is running low.